Exterminators hate it. 12 states banned it. This $1 powder wiped out an entire ant colony in 24 hours. There is a powder sitting on the shelf of your nearest grocery store right now. It costs less than $1 per use. It has been registered with the EPA since 1948. It kills the workers, the soldiers, the larvae, and the queen, every single one. And it does it silently, from the inside out, using the colony's own biology as the weapon. Your great-grandmother knew exactly what it was. She kept it next to the laundry detergent. She never once paid for an exterminator. Then a $26 billion industry was built, and somehow everyone forgot. Not by accident. Welcome to Hidden Fix Lab, the channel where buried science gets dug back up, and the solutions they buried with it get put back in your hands. If you're watching this, and you have been fighting ants for years, or maybe decades, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Think of it like saving a recipe your grandmother wrote on a torn piece of paper before someone throws it away forever. And before we go any further, drop a comment and tell us, where in the world are you watching from today? Because what comes next is something the pest control industry spent billions making sure you would never find. The year is 875 AD. A Persian physician named Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi sits in his laboratory in the city of Ray, near modern-day Tehran. He is cataloging minerals, he is testing their properties on living tissue, and in one of the oldest surviving medical encyclopedias in human history, the Kitab al-Hawi, he documents a white crystalline mineral pulled from dry desert lakes. He calls it by its Arabic name, borak. He notes that it dissolves insects from the inside. He writes that it disrupts digestion at the cellular level. He recommends it for household pest removal. That was over 100 years ago. The mineral al-Razi documented was borax, a naturally occurring sodium borate compound formed over millions of years in ancient lake beds where water evaporated and left behind dense mineral deposits. Civilizations across Persia, Tibet, and Central Asia had been harvesting it from dry salt flats long before any European nation existed. Tibetan traders carried it along the Silk Road. Arab physicians prescribed it. Chinese craftsmen used it in ceramic glazes. For over 1,000 years, it moved quietly through the ancient world. Valued, documented, and trusted. Nobody needed a laboratory to prove it worked. They had already watched it work for centuries. Then came 1881, Death Valley, California. A prospector named Aaron Winters was living in a carved stone shelter near Furnace Creek with his wife Rosie. Their home was described in historical records as a hole cut from rock, with a thatched roof pressed against a desert hillside. They were barely surviving. One night, a wandering traveler described strange white crystals scattered across dry lake beds in Nevada. Winters froze. He had seen those exact crystals littered across the ground near his own camp. That same night, he scraped some into a tin pan and held a flame underneath. The substance burned bright green. The green flame test, an ancient and unmistakable indicator of one specific mineral, borax. Within months, a San Francisco businessman named William Tell Coleman purchased the mineral rights to the entire deposit. He built the Harmony Borax Works, the first successful commercial borax refinery in Death Valley history. By the late 1800s, borax had entered every American household. Families used it in laundry soap, toothpaste, and cleaning solutions. But there was one use that nobody was marketing, one use that grandmothers across the country had quietly discovered on their own, and it had nothing to do with laundry. Most pest control products work on the surface. They spray, they coat, they repel. And the colony survives underground, completely untouched, while the queen keeps producing thousands of eggs every single day. That is not pest control, that is pest management, designed to keep the customer calling back. Borax works on an entirely different principle. When a foraging worker ant makes contact with the borax and sugar mixture, nothing dramatic happens. The ant does not collapse, it does not convulse, it simply eats and walks away. That delayed reaction is not a weakness, it is the entire mechanism. Borax interferes with the ant's digestive enzymes at the cellular level. It slowly disrupts the metabolic process, dehydrating the insect from the inside while leaving its behavior completely intact. The poisoned ant continues doing exactly what its biology demands. It carries food back to the nest. Scientists call the sharing process trophallaxis, the mouth-to-mouth food exchange that holds every ant colony on Earth together. One poisoned ant feeds another. That ant feeds the larvae feed the queen. The colony's greatest evolutionary strength becomes its only fatal vulnerability. In 1971, a formal peer-reviewed study published in the Journal of Economic Entomology documented borax bait as an effective tool for controlling ant populations in domestic environments. Researchers observed complete colony elimination within 24 to 72 hours of consistent bait exposure. By 1987, a controlled laboratory study conducted at the University of Florida specifically confirmed boric acid's lethal effectiveness against pharaoh ants, one of the most notoriously difficult indoor species to eliminate. The science was not new. It was not experimental. It had already been proven twice over before most homeowners had ever heard the word borax. Commercial sprays skip this entire biological chain entirely. They kill the workers on contact and leave the reproductive center of the colony completely untouched. The queen detects chemical disruption through pheromone signals, triggers emergency egg production, and the colony rebounds within days. This is documented behavior. It is not speculation. And the pest control industry built a $26 billion machine knowing exactly how that rebound cycle works. Because a colony that keeps coming back is a customer that keeps calling. In 1970, the United States pest control industry was worth approximately $1.2 billion annually. By 2024, that number had climbed past $26 billion. That growth did not happen because ants got stronger. It happened because the solution got buried. The story begins with a specific decision made in 1972. That was the year the National Pest Management Association, the largest pest control trade group in the United States, formally began lobbying state legislatures to introduce licensing and certification requirements for residential pest treatment. On the surface, it sounded reasonable. Protect consumers, ensure safety, regulate chemicals. But buried inside those licensing frameworks was something far more calculated. Language that discouraged homeowners from self-treating. Clauses that defined certain pest interventions as requiring professional application. Marketing guidance distributed to member companies, instructing them to emphasize the complexity and chemical danger of ant infestations specifically. Not because ant infestations were complex, because borax made them simple. In 1978, Dr. Austin Frischman, one of the most respected entomologists in American pest management history and a longtime industry consultant, publicly stated in the Pest Control Trade magazine that boric acid baits represented the single most effective long-term solution for indoor ant control available to the American homeowner. He named the ratio. He described the mechanism. He recommended it without reservation. The article received no major coverage outside the trade publication. No pest control company referenced it in consumer-facing materials. No industry association circulated it to homeowners. Dr. Frischman's findings were not disputed. They were simply never repeated anywhere the public could find them. By 1993, there were 189 federally registered pesticide products containing borax on the EPA registry. The active ingredient was publicly available. The science was documented. The cost was $4 per box. That same year, the pest control industry spent an estimated $150 million on consumer advertising, positioning professional extermination as the only responsible solution for household pest problems. They did not need to ban borax. Banning it would have raised questions. Instead, they buried it under branded products, professional licensing requirements, and quarterly service contracts engineered to renew automatically. That is not a conspiracy. That is just economics. And the homeowner, writing a $300 check every spring, was the product the entire system was actually selling. In the spring of 2019, a retired school teacher named Margaret Holloway from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, had been paying a pest control company $480 every single year for 6 consecutive years. That is $2,880 spent on quarterly visits from a man in a white truck who sprayed the same baseboards every 3 months and handed her the same printed invoice every single time. The ants came back every spring without fail. Then her neighbor, a 74-year-old woman who had never once called an exterminator, handed her a handwritten index card with 3 ingredients on it: borax, sugar, warm water. Margaret set the bait on a Friday evening. By Sunday morning, her kitchen was completely clear. She has not called an exterminator since. Here is exactly what Margaret's neighbor knew, and what the pest control industry spent decades making certain the average homeowner would never think to look up. The method requires 3 items available at any grocery store in any town in any state in the country. 1 box of 20 Mule Team borax, approximately $4. 1 box lasts years across multiple treatments. Regular white granulated sugar, standard table sugar, nothing specially. Warm water. In a clean bowl, combine exactly 1 tablespoon of borax with 3 tablespoons of white sugar. The ratio is not approximate. 3 parts sugar to 1 part borax is the precise concentration that university entomologists and independent researchers have confirmed effective across decades of controlled testing. Too much borax and the foraging ants detect a chemical irregularity in the food and abandon the bait entirely. Too little borax and the workers survive long enough for the colony to adapt and recover. 3 to 1 is the proven threshold. It has not changed in over a century. Add 1/4 cup of warm water. Stir slowly until both the sugar and borax dissolve completely into a clear syrup, roughly the consistency of thin pancake batter. Soak clean cotton balls thoroughly in the mixture. Place them directly along visible ant trails, along baseboards, beneath cabinets, near entry points, and beside any moisture source where activity has been spotted. Now comes the single most important instruction in this entire process. Do not kill the ants walking toward the bait. Every foraging worker that reaches that cotton ball alive is carrying a lethal payload directly into the heart of the nest. Killing them on contact destroys the delivery chain and the colony survives. Within 24 hours, the trail slows. Within 48 hours, the queen has ingested the contaminated food supply. Within 72 hours, the colony is in complete collapse. Margaret Holloway spent $2,880 over 6 years. Her neighbor spent 12 cents. The powder was always on the shelf. The only thing that was ever missing was the index card